Welcome back to Global Maritime News, the podcast bringing you the most impactful news reports and analysis across the global shipping and supply chain industry over the past week. I'm Levine, your host, and as of Sunday, 20th of March, 5 p.m. Singapore time, these are the major stories. First off, the Everford is still grounded after being stuck in mud, as the ship is expected to undergo a prolonged salvage. Next up, Ukrainian seafarers have stepped in to ensure that evacuated ships are no longer completely abandoned. And moving on, tanker rates have continued to decline after reaching a peak after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And later in the podcast, we talk about how Singapore has hosted the Asia-Pacific Maritime Conference, the first in-person maritime trade show since the start of the pandemic. Starting off, the Everford is still grounded after being stuck last Sunday night when it left the port of Baltimore. Evergreen, the owner of the ship, has hired Don John Smith as the salvage company in an operation to refloat the vessel. In an update released on Evergreen's website, they said that the salvage team is mobilizing all available local tugboats to join in the refloating operation. And once sufficient mud has been removed, the refloating operation will begin by using tugboats and the power of the ship's main engine. So far, underwater inspections have shown that the vessel has not been damaged by the grounding, and no fuel leakage has been found yet. The ship has been ordered by the U.S. Coast Guard to conduct soundings every 4 hours of all tanks, bilges, and voids to check for pollution and to report any changes in the ship's stability, draft, or position, as well as indications of oil discharge. Evergreen also mentioned that the weight of cargo is a consideration in the plan to refloat the ship, which could imply that it may be necessary to remove containers from the ship in order to refloat it. This podcast will continue to monitor developments as they come about for the Everforward. Moving on, as we covered the story about the ships that have been abandoned as seafarers have been evacuated a few episodes ago, ship owners are coming up with new ways to safely evacuate their ships, but not leave the vessels completely abandoned. According to Tradewinds, one group of Greek and other ship owners has approached the Panama Maritime Authority's representative in the southwestern port of Odessa in order to replace international crews with Ukrainian seafarers and avoid the possibility of abandoned vessels. Another group of owners and managers have also approached embassies and local port authorities, including Hong Kong's fleet management. They're doing so because they all face the same challenge of trying to avoid abandoned vessels, especially since no corridor for safe evacuation has been negotiated with Russia, whose warships are blocking Ukrainian ports. Sea Star Chartering and Starbulk carriers have managed to replace their crews with local Ukrainians, and approximately 40 seafarers from Myanmar, the Philippines, and India have been replaced so far. Furthermore, according to a new report from the UK consultancy Drewry, Russia's invasion of Ukraine will have an impact on the availability of seafarers to the world's merchant fleet, particularly for officers whose supply has tightened, and this has led to rising wage inflation and higher operating costs. According to Drewry statistics, the combined supply of officers and ratings from Russia and Ukraine accounts for approximately 13% of global supply in officers and 8% in ratings. The wet bulk and gas trades are most vulnerable to a drop in Russian and Ukrainian crew availability, and Drewry warned that this, combined with rising marine insurance premiums, would raise vessel operating costs. Continuing on in news related to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, tanker rates have continued to decline after reaching a peak after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. A few weeks ago, we covered how tanker rates rallied after the invasion due to higher fuel prices and risk premiums. But unfortunately, these rates have continued to cool since the invasion 3 weeks ago. On Friday, the Baltic Dirty Tanker Index ended with a 1-week loss of 170 points, while the Baltic Clean Tanker Index lost 56 points. Furthermore, in related business and trade news, seaborne trade with Russia has dropped by 58% since the start of the invasion of Ukraine. Sanctions, as well as the dangers of warfare, have effectively caused Russia to be removed from global seaborne trade. The decrease in ship calls is being felt far from the conflict as well. According to calculations by the investment bank UBS, ports in the Baltic Sea, such as St. Petersburg, which accounts for a third of Russia's nautical trade, now has seen 65% fewer ships making port calls. Ports in the Pacific, such as Vladivostok, have also seen a 52% drop in volume since the war began on February 24th. Also, according to Windward data released yesterday, crude oil carriers departing from Russia are no longer calling at ports in Europe, Asia, or North America. The only line that's increasing in their chart is for unknown destinations, which represent vessels that haven't yet arrived at their destination. According to Windward, this means that there are still approximately 46 million Russian oil barrels on their way to a destination outside of Russia. And moving over to our last story for today, Singapore hosts the Asia-Pacific Maritime Conference, the first in-person maritime trade show since the start of the pandemic. It attracted thousands of attendees throughout the world, including key industrial professionals, industry players, and government officials, as well as more than 200 exhibitors. And beyond the exhibition, there was also the 3-day conference discussing major topics, including Asian container shipping and ports, maritime cybersecurity, and maritime technology, as well as sustainability forums. Aside from in-person knowledge exchange and networking, this APM 2022 also served as a platform for the maritime community in Asia to form strategic partnerships. One such important milestone was the signing of an MOU between the Association of Singapore Marine Industry, ASMI, and Korea Marine Equipment Association, KOMEA. This MOU, the first of its kind between the two countries, will allow both associations to strengthen business ties, facilitate cross-border collaboration, and leverage growth opportunities for their members in the shipbuilding and offshore sectors. Singapore will also be soon holding another key maritime event, Singapore Maritime Week 2022, in 2 weeks' time, from 4th to 8th of April, which will also be super exciting for all of us who are following the maritime sector. And that is all for now. If you want to comment on this podcast and the topics that we've covered, you can send us an email. The address is maritimenewspodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Global Maritime News. I'm Levine, your host, and until next time, goodbye.